All right, should I just go ahead?
Go for it.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Nora Mayer. I am a senior at McLean High School in McLean, Virginia, and I'm here to talk to you about my experience in the Virginia Aerospace Science and Technology Scholars, or simply VASTS. My field of interest is astrophysics, and that's what I intend to major in when I attend university. In particular, I enjoy galactic formation and evolution. I don't know, I think it's just something about just how interconnected it is and seeing how we came to be. But moving on. In my spare time, I do a variety of activities from writing horror, sewing, gardening, to preserving animal bones. I know that one seems a little odd, but I approach it as a three-dimensional puzzle of sorts. Currently, I'm working on cleaning and articulating, putting together, a raccoon I've lovingly named Leonard Cohen. I also like to play a browser game called Flight Rising, so if you know what that is, feel free to send me a friend request. All right, while I'm certain that I intend to proverbially sell my soul to academia in exchange for a PhD and professorship, it's always nice to have a place with no responsibilities or deadlines to retreat to. When I was younger, my family moved around a lot, one of the perks of having a father in the Foreign Service. So it was difficult for me to keep in touch with friends. As a result, I turned to books. When I was homeschooled in 6th grade, my mom bought me dozens of books on every subject under the sun. And one of those books was Cosmos by Carl Sagan. Cosmos was by no means an easy read for me at that time. In fact, it lay untouched for months, and the first time I picked it up, I didn't even understand most of the words there. It was too complex for me. That didn't deter me, though, so I took it upon myself to kind of go through, find all the words I didn't know, and learn those, and then come back to the book. Now, I've probably read Cosmos cover to cover 7 or 8 times. My copy is quite well creased, and you can see pink highlighter in the first few chapters, where I was still learning. All right, next slide, please. So, I found out about VASTS through an acquaintance of mine in the French class of my sophomore year. She mentioned that she had interned at NASA headquarters in DC as a result of her experience in VASTS, and we got started talking about what that was like to do. It was too late to apply that year, but the moment I got home, I printed out the date applications open for the next year. VASTS is a free online course available to Virginia residents, composed of several modules you need to write reports for. If you do well in that, you may also get selected for the week-long summer academy at NASA Langley. There's also the option of receiving college credit for those 2 components, MEC 195 and MEC 100 respectively, through Thomas Nelson Community College. All right, next slide, please. So I mentioned something called the Virginia Space Grant Consortium. That's basically the group through which VASTS is run. It's one of 52 consortia operating across the US and Puerto Rico. Each consortium operates with support from NASA and a variety of higher education institutions to help provide NASA-themed activities for students. While I believe that the majority of, it says my microphone is noisy. Is there much of a disturbance? No? Okay.
No, it's all good. Keep going.
Okay. So while I believe that the majority of space grant programs are exclusive to the state in which they're based, there are some national programs sponsored by this. A good example would be the SEAS program, which was spoken about in the previous week, which is run through the Texas Space Grant Consortium, but is open to all US citizens. To find your state's space grant website, just Google something like Your State Space Grant Consortium, and it should show up. All right, next slide. So what exactly did I do during VASTS? Well, for the online learning portion, we completed 7 technical reports plus a final research project. I've included some examples of my work here. They're color-coded because otherwise it looked a little bit homogeneous. Going clockwise from top right, there's the Mission Design Technical Report in blue. In this one, we had to design any kind of mission so long as we utilized satellites monitoring Earth. In my project, I created a means of monitoring algal blooms jointly through NASA and NOAA through a system of satellites in geostationary and polar orbits. And then next, in the Risk Management Plan Technical Report in red, I addressed the 3 risk factors I considered most pressing for a manned mission to Mars. Well, the ones I chose were radiation, crew selection, and communication. In the report, I was expected to justify my choices, address how they're being dealt with currently, and create my own risk mitigation program. An example of addressing the issue of communication would be either preventing it altogether through the use of a satellite network, which would be quite costly to send to Mars and set up, and it would also delay a mission by quite a while. Or you could just train the crew to work independently of mission control, which is much less costly, but there is a higher risk if something were to go dreadfully wrong. All right, and finally, in the Scoping It Out technical report, I had to select and justify the location for a place to deploy a rover on Mars before constructing a base. Like the other reports, you're not given much guidance, so you have to come up with your own criteria and hierarchy of factors. The best way to start with something like this is to build off what you know. Radiation danger? Find a map of Mars showing how much radiation each region receives. Scientific interest? Find out what scientists are most curious about and identify promising locations. You get the idea. You find those factors, you compare them, and then you find which place you think would work best for that. For me, this all came together in the dry riverbed of VASTS. Once that was done, I had to create a plan for what the rover was going to do, and once again, that called for even more research. Since they didn't give us the exact specifications of the rover, I went through, looked for the most recent Mars rovers, compared the specs for that and to the terrain that would be expected on VASTS, and then created my estimate for travel. It shouldn't be surprising to you that my reports tended to fall between 5 and 15 pages, citations included. Even if you're not accepted to the Summer Academy, just the completion of this online coursework provides you with a number of useful skills. You learn to prioritize information, to construct a formal report, to parse dense texts. I know that I came out of this much more confident in my technical writing and eager to learn much more about fields that I'd previously brushed off as dull or tedious. For example, I used to not be interested in geology at all, but once I did the Scoping It Out technical report, I became a lot more interested about what applications of discoveries in Martian soil could be. There's the option of building bricks from regolith, like what's been done with moon dust, which would in turn help building Martian bases and things like that. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so the VASTS Summer Academy was different this year than in the past. Firstly, because of COVID, we did all of our work online through WebEx. We also were not able to visit NASA Langley in person or meet the speakers face-to-face. While that's quite disappointing, I'll admit, Virginia Space Grant did an excellent job of creating a new course structure to accommodate this. The purpose of the Summer Academy is to create a full round-trip mission from Earth to Mars and back. It's up to you, or your group, to determine its goals, duration, launch and landing windows, spacecraft used, etc. To start off, you have the option of choosing from one of 3 one-week sessions through the month of July. After that, you're asked to rank your interests from a given list before you're assigned to a group of 2 to 4 people to create a brief presentation before the Academy itself starts. When the Academy begins, you are once again divided into 5 groups: Mission Integration, Human Factors, Mission Transit, Science and Surface Operations, and Mission Outreach. Each of these groups has similar roles, but your specific duty will depend on your group. For example, I was Mission Integration's Radiation Specialist. As Mission Integration's RadSpec, my job was to oversee and pull together the plans from all of the other team's RadSpecs to ensure that no group was giving too much leeway when it came to radiation dosage. Each role would be able to schedule meetings with their counterparts over the course of the day to check in or ask questions. The most interesting thing was that this entire endeavor was self-guided. The mentors and undergrads overseeing this program were simply there to help liaise between groups, like schedule meetings or remind us that it was time to break or something like that, and just give us only the most general guidance. What I enjoyed about being RadSpec for Mission Integration was that I got to dip my toes in all aspects of radiation without having to focus on only one facet of the issue, as would have been necessary had I been on another team. I also didn't realize that the subject matter was as interesting as it turned out to be. When I finished the academy, I was certain that, in the future, I'll be taking more courses on radiation sources and radiation mitigation. Some of the speakers for this program were engineers from JPL, astronauts, or simply space educators. We all spent time discussing their career trajectory, their interests, and examples of what they did in their jobs before opening up for questions. Everyone here was unfailingly friendly, and they all were there to help guide us, not for any self-gain or anything like that. In addition to that, there were also some volunteers from various space-aligned careers who came in and out of team breakout rooms to give advice and share their experiences at VASTS. Perhaps the most memorable of those for me was a man who works at the DoD with satellites. He talked to us about potential internships we could apply for, how to get a metaphorical foot in the door with government jobs, and how he used his skills from VASTS to further his career. All right, slide 6, please, or next slide, please. All right, so let's finally talk about the tour of NASA Langley, as it was. We unfortunately were not able to go there in person, but we were able to take a virtual tour of Langley's gantry, which is shown in the pictures here. Basically, it's a huge sort of crane structure where things are just dropped or crash tested off of. This is the place where they perform crash tests for aircraft and spacecraft, as well as conducted the training for some of the earlier astronauts. In the top right picture, you can see one of the landing capsules for a space mission. Those were drop tested on both like hard soil and on water. In fact, they actually constructed a swimming pool or pool of water specifically to crash test things that were landing from space. All right, next slide, please. So overall, my experience was just an overwhelmingly positive one. It was one of the most immersive programs I've completed, and I truly felt a sense of companionship and responsibility when I worked on the summer academy. At that point, everybody there knows it's not a competition anymore. You're all there because you deserve to be there. You all have the same end goals: create a successful mission to Mars. And even though you may have different ideas about what that looks like, everyone there learns to negotiate and compromise civilly while still respecting the restrictions that have been set in place. For example, you're given a budget, you're given a time limit, it's up to you to determine the maximum dose that an astronaut could incur. But even just while completing my online coursework, I was always so excited to work on my research papers because just pulling all of these ideas together and sharing them was satisfying. I felt like I was working towards a greater goal of sorts, even though I'm not entirely certain what that was. Maybe it was just learning more about space, a subject in which I'm incredibly passionate about. So while I don't think that I'll be directly taking any of these facts that I learned during this program and applying them to my current educational track, it's still an invaluable experience to be able to connect with and learn from your peers. And if you guys have any questions, I can talk a little bit more about that.
All right, so one question we got is, do you have any tips for aspiring scholars?
I think the main thing is to be enthusiastic in your application. You can't be worried about sounding like you're coming across as bragging. You have to be confident in yourself, but you also have to be excited to apply. If this is a program you're really interested in, you have to show it to them because they're going to have a lot of people applying as well.
So next question, what space-related internship do you plan on doing next?
Okay, I'm actually applying to another one run through the Virginia Space Grant Consortium called VESSS. This one's more geology related, but it still has some space applications through like use of satellites and the like. I can't say I know very much about it because the applications just opened up and I just found out about it, but it does seem quite interesting. So if that seems like something you want to do, I'd encourage you to apply for it. You never know until you try.
And last question, how do you feel this program has helped you the most in the long run?
In the long run, I'd say this program was the most helpful in teaching me to work in a professional environment. During the online academy portion, we were all expected to behave like professionals and communicate like professionals in the field. So it was nice to get a feel of how are you expected to present information? How are you supposed to field questions if you don't know the answer to them and things like that? Anything else?
Nope, that was all the questions we got.
All right. It was nice talking to you guys.
Thank you for doing this webinar.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Have a great day, everyone.